Isn't this wonderful? Her Majesty the Queen was spotted walking unaided in a major milestone. After nearly a year of health problems, Her Majesty has travelled to Edinburgh, but there is much more to this trip than tradition. Hello, and a very warm welcome to the Sussex Daily News Channel. What do the Queen, Katie Price, the media personality, and disgraced former British Prime Minister Matt Hancock have in common today? Well, they have been caught unawares by having their photographs taken, which have ended up splashed across the front page of the Sun newspaper. Katie Price had been in the headlines recently after it was reported that she had avoided jail for breaching a restraining order. Hancock, on the other hand, had been filmed dancing with students in Oxford. I shudder in my boots at the thought. But what was Her Majesty the Queen doing that was of such importance? The Queen walked. She was secretly captured, making her way under her own steam. She appeared to be on top form as she beamed with delight and walked using her stick as an aid. The 96-year-old monarch made it to the front pages again. It was wonderful to see her walking unaided to the royal train, which was heading to Edinburgh for her to take part in the Scottish Royal Week. On Tuesday morning, the world woke up to new images of the Queen, looking so happy. It seemed as if her favourite horse had just won the Gold Cup. Buckingham Palace had said the week before that Her Majesty was hoping that she would make the trip. Over the past year, the Queen has not been able to attend certain events, and last-minute apologies have been made, simply because of her mobility issues. The Queen's non-attendance at the Scottish Royal Week would not have come as a surprise. Yet, Her Majesty graced us with her presence. Her Majesty joined the armed forces at the Palace of Holyrood House as they marked her Platinum Jubilee in Scotland. The appearance came as Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, is planning to announce her plans for a second referendum. As head of state, the Queen has to remain strictly neutral with respect to all political matters. But it seems that the Queen is concerned about Scotland gaining independence. After all, the union between England and Scotland dates back to 1603. The thought of Scottish independence should not have us taking out our tissues while we sniffle and quietly and mournfully hum "God Save the Queen." We must remember how strong and shrewd Her Majesty is. We know that the Queen is obliged to keep her political opinions to herself. This does not mean that the Queen has never involved herself during delicate moments like this before. An example of this happened in 2014 when it was the Scottish independence referendum. She had been standing outside her local Balmoral church, where she addressed a member of the crowd and said, "Well, I hope people will think very carefully about the future." Last year, the diaries of former Financial Times editor Lionel Barber were published. He claims that 3 days before the Queen deployed this line outside Balmoral Church, Andrew had revealed that during a dinner at Buckingham Palace, his mother was planning to give her opinion on the situation in Scotland. Then we have the incident in 2019 when the Queen turned to the most famous political organisation named the Sandringham Women's Institute. She had urged the British public to seek common ground and never forget to look at the bigger picture. Could this have been perceived as the Queen acknowledging the tense Brexit talks? An extraordinary example of the Queen's knack for using her influence and leadership came in Ghana in 1961. The Cold War was becoming more intense. The African nation, which had gained independence from Britain in 1957, looked on anxiously. They had been fearful of falling under the spell of Russia and President Nikita Khrushchev. That November, the Queen and Prince Philip were scheduled to visit Ghana for an official trip. Sectarian violence had just broken out in Ghana, and a few days before the Queen and Philip were due to arrive, 2 bombs had exploded in Accra, which is the country's capital. The Queen had realized what was at stake, and she bravely continued with her visit and stated, "I am not a movie star. I am head of the Commonwealth, and I am paid to face any risks that may come with it." Photographs had been captured of Her Majesty doing the foxtrot with Ghana's president. The images of the dancing Queen had gone viral around the world, and they sent an incredibly powerful message of equality. 4 years later, the Voting Rights Act went into effect in the United States. It gave black men and women equal rights to vote. The outcome was that Ghana resisted the Soviets and decided to remain in the Commonwealth. We can clearly see that Her Majesty is far more than just a ceremonial figure carrying a scepter. In her 70 years on the throne, the Queen has had approximately 3,600 audiences with 14 British Prime Ministers. She has hosted over 100 world leaders and has visited more than 100 countries. Another astonishing example was the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in 1991 in Harare. The key topics for discussion was apartheid and South African sanctions. The 65-year-old monarch at the time had been doing her usual dinner hosting bit when, guess who turned up? Nelson Mandela. He had not been on the guest list as he was not head of state at the time. The Queen, being the sharp person she is, understood the gravity and symbolism of her reaction. She did not perform and carry on. She called for an extra seat and invited Mandela to join in for dinner. There were also the events of 2011, when the Queen and Prince Philip had travelled to Ireland for the first state visit in a century. Obviously, the couple's safety was paramount, and the massive security operation required cost $46 million. At the beginning of the tour, an audience had gathered at Dublin Castle to listen to the Queen's first speech. A gasp had been heard from the audience as the Queen had begun her speech speaking in Gaelic. It was most impressive, and Prime Minister David Cameron had later reported that it was a brilliant moment. It is quite remarkable that the Queen has, throughout the decades, managed to maintain universal love and respect. She has remained a constant and a stabilizing force. She is an intelligent operator who has learnt how to win friends in the international community and influence people. In other words, this is not the first diplomatically delicate challenge Her Majesty has had to face, nor is it her first intervention. There has never been a shortage of family dramatics within the royal family. These must surely have an effect on Her Majesty. She also suffers from episodic mobility issues. Despite the problems she has had to endure, it is so wonderful to see that despite her age, she is still a dab hand at statecraft. Scottish nationalists, however, might not agree on that last point. We are not sure how often the Scottish will see the Queen this week. What we do know, however, is that the fact that the Royal Standard is flying over Holyrood House right now proves that when it comes to politics, nobody must attempt to mess with our Queen. And you, what do you think about this news? Please tell me what your views are in the comments section, and we can discuss the royal family. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and share it with your friends. Do not miss any new updates from the Sussex Daily News Today team by subscribing to our channel. Now thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you tomorrow.